you are. We are here to talk about columns and swim lanes in Jira boards. So I'll give folks a few minutes to jump on in. Liz, welcome from LA, or Los Angeles. I seem to recall the name of the city of Los Angeles is really gigantically long, or at least the official name. We just use the short name for some reason. I don't know if that's true or not. All right, I'll give people another moment before we get started. But I hope you are all having a great week. We are into September, which means it's almost fall, which I don't know where the summer went. But hopefully you all had a good summer with your family or doing whatever you do. All right, starting to get some more folks. Give them just one more moment before we get started, because we have some interesting stuff to talk about with columns and swim lanes. And I really hope Chad is here just to make sure we know the difference between swim lanes and columns, which, if folks remember from our first session, swim lanes are the vertical ones, or horizontal ones. Columns are the vertical ones. And good, Chad is here. Perfect. Dom's channel, welcome from Strasbourg. Don't know if I said that right or not, but good to see you. And Chad, good, you are here. We will talk about swim lanes, my friend. And I'll quickly drop a poll in the chat here. We will fight. All right, team. We're going to jump on in as normal. There will be some slides to talk about the concepts and orient us. And we're also going to see some, maybe not significant differences, but some differences between our team and company-managed projects that we should just be aware of. If not for practicality, certainly for certainly for the exam in case it comes up. I'm just chuckling again with Chad. So, quick way of introduction if you haven't been in here with me before. My name's Rob. I've had a career in IT, various project roles, various IT roles. Mainly ended up as a project manager. So I used boards quite a bit, and learning how to use them was very important to successfully managing my team, because their work would be in the board. Typically, it would be a Scrum board. And honestly, looking back, I should have probably used some Kanban boards because those would have been better suited to the work. Remember, Scrum boards have those sprints, whereas Kanban boards are just focused on the process. And it's important for us as admins to remember the tool we use should be driven by the needs of the team, not by the fact that we should be agile or we should use Scrum or someone else uses Scrum. We really need to sit back and understand what does our team or group need to do, and then find the tool that supports them. In terms of, wrong button. In terms of interaction, please use the chat. It's right over there, over my left shoulder, on the right side of your screen. Drop comments in there, drop questions. Let me know if I've zoomed in the wrong spot or you can't hear me. But that'll be the best way to get the most out of these sessions. I'm also now doing this professionally as a full-time content creator, so please hit the like button and subscribe. That helps me out. It helps other people find it too, so I'll remind you to do that. There are also some QR codes on your screen. The one directly under my head goes to my learning platform. And I'll drop the link in the chat. There's learn.heen.tech. And also consider becoming a channel member. That's another very, easy way to support the channel. Chad is a channel member. He gets early access to videos and some other perks like some fun emojis that I've put in here. Also, when I meet you, I'll buy you a coffee and just get to know you. But primarily use the chat. I'll also be using polls like the one you see on your screen. That's more related to just learning about what you know and trying to understand where else we should go and investigate. A very quick agenda. We will do a quick review over what we've learned over the past few weeks. And this will just, or at least the last session, this will help us learn what's going on. Good to see you, Kathra. And then we'll jump into column management and then swim lane management. And Chad is showing off some of the beautiful emojis you can get. And then we'll get hands-on with these. I mentioned that there is this split between team and company managed, so we'll examine both just so we understand them. The concepts are the same, thankfully. So when we think of a column, the idea of a column is the same regardless of is this a company or team managed project. So thankfully we don't have new concepts. However, where we find the controls and the exact features that are available will differ slightly. And so this is just important to understand when we go to support our team. We know what the tool is capable of in different contexts and in different ways. Also, it helps make sure we don't get too frustrated because I have spent way too much time looking for something that didn't exist. All right, another quick poll, and I'm going to get some coffee. Oops, wrong button. Now, we've spoken about Kanban boards focusing on process and Scrum boards having sprints. And Scrum boards have a very distinct backlog. So the question is, can a Kanban board have a backlog? And I ask this because when we make a Kanban board, there's just the Kanban board tab. There's no backlog. And typically on a Kanban board, the leftmost column just contains all the work that the team can then pull from and move into the columns. So just a quick question while I drink some coffee. Thank you to my sponsors, Chad, for the coffee. Can a Kanban board have a backlog? Now, a quick review from last time about our permissions and filters. So just as reminders, board admins control boards in company managed projects. So it's a special permission you have to be given. And this makes it fairly flexible. You could have multiple board admins, and that's all they get to do, just that one board. So you might have 2 or 3 boards, and you have different people administering each board. Project admins, however, control them in team-managed projects. And this makes sense because team-managed projects are intended to be simpler and more approachable. However, if you want to make someone a board admin in that team-managed project, it does mean you have to give them it doesn't mean you have to give them project manager access or project admin access. So they'll be able to do anything in the project. So that's a massive distinction we need to be aware of. In a company managed project, if you can't see the filter, you can't see work items in the board. Very common challenge people run into, something that is insanely frustrating. Please keep it in mind. And if you have cross project boards, you have a board in a company managed project, you'll be able to pull in work items from different projects. People need to browse permission in the other projects to see those work items. So just some big reviews from last time that we definitely need to be aware of. And if I'd say I eat my hat if you don't run into this problem at some point in your career, but I would run out of hats. All right, today we're focusing on boards and swim lanes. Boards and swim lanes, excuse me. Columns and swim lanes. I need more coffee. Please consider becoming a member so I can get more caffeine. This is a fifth of the exam, so 20%. It's the second biggest grouping of stuff after the board permissions and filters. So again, just keep this in mind as you're considering how you study and learn and grow and expand. But the next slide is going to give us an answer to can Kanban boards have a backlog? So if you haven't answered the poll, take a quick second and just do a yes or a no, whatever you think. All right, here we go. Oh, there we are. I lied. We had one more extra slide. Yes, Kanban boards can have a backlog. Now, this is turned off by default. And this is why when you make the Kanban board, you don't see it. When we go in and manage columns, though, we're going to see that backlog. And this is true for both company and team managed projects. So this is something that is non-obvious unless you go into the settings. And it's something that I was like, oh, this is surprising. I guess this is possible. Because again, Kanban doesn't really have this concept generically. In that Kanban is just concerned with the process, whereas Scrum has to have it because all the work items not in the sprint have to go somewhere. So this is just an interesting feature that we can turn on. Kythra, that's exactly what I said. And I kind of like it, honestly. And I kind of like it because I can easily see, someone has asked, can we do like Scrumban or other variations? This can get us a step towards that. The backlog feature gives us more flexibility if we choose to use it. So if your team, and I can see this being very, very useful if your team is complaining your leftmost column in your Kanban board is just so big you can't find anything easily, you can break out a Kanban backlog. Now you have to map a status to it. So one thing we'll learn about columns, every column must have one status. So you'll need to have some kind of status in your Kanban project. Chad, neither did I. I'll be honest, I learned this when I built this slide deck and I was just poking around in menus. I was like, wait a minute. It says Kanban backlog right there at the top. And I'll talk about how we can add these in. All right, I'm going to put in a question, and I don't quite know the right way to phrase it. Do your column names always match your status names? And this is more, what have you done? Not does the system force you? But when you're in Jira, do your column names always match your status names? And I'll talk about this more as we go, but I'm just curious what folks do and how they happen to use the system. So I'll start out with team-managed projects and columns. Columns in a team-managed project can be edited directly on the board itself. You can move the columns left and right. You can do things like set column limits, so a work-in-progress limit, and even just straight up delete them. So this is something that we, as the project/board admin, we can easily do right from... Oh, interesting, and we're seeing more no's. I love that. For the folks who say no to this question, I'm curious if you could share your reasoning. And I'm just asking because I love learning how different teams use the tool. In my experience, we've almost always matched the column name to the status names. And that's just what I happen to do. I do understand there's use cases the other way, but curious if folks who are in there can share. Also, I might kick up this discussion in our Discord channel. So if you're looking for more chat, join us in Discord. You might have to use a personal email if your work doesn't like it. Anyway, team-managed board admins can just manage them directly on the board. You can just click and drag or use these, you can use these more action items to move your columns left and right and just delete them or even add new ones right from here. Now, when you first, some other things I've noticed in a team-managed project, when you create a new status in your workflow, that will insert a new column. Now, this can be good and bad. I see why this happens, just to make sure you have the column. It can also mess up your board. So just a heads up, if you're going in and adding statuses, this can directly impact your board. And it will default to a global transition. So anything can go to it. Or if you make the add a column to the board, this can also, in some cases, add a new status to your workflow. Good and bad. They want to assume, they being Atlassian, that we want this to be as simple and as easy to set up as possible. So I can see why a feature like this exists, and I'll try and demonstrate this as we go. But just be aware, if you are making statuses or making columns, this can impact the board or your workflows. And this is where having multiple project admins could possibly be annoying. If Dom goes in, or if Dom's channel goes in, I'll use your full handle, and adds a status that I'm unaware of, this can change what my board looks like, and that can make it confusing for my team. So just be aware that there's that interplay as well. Now, we can map statuses in a team-managed project. We have to go into board settings, which is under project settings. Tushar, welcome, my friend. Good to see you. Talking about statuses and board columns in team-managed projects. So we can map statuses in both types of projects. By default, it's one status per column, but you can do multiple columns, multiple statuses per column. Regardless, every column has to have at least one status. It looks like we're about evenly split on column names matching status names. Because the client told me, okay, that's a fair reason. Dom's channel, Yeah, I'm curious why folks choose to do this though. Or like, how does the workflow work, or what benefit do we get? Less columns for sure. Now, in a company managed project, things are a bit different. The statuses are edited in board settings. So you have to open up a menu to get to these. You can't do it directly from the board. And there's a layout menu that handles columns. Now, the last column on the right is a done column. You'll see it's like gray, blue, and green. And that's just a visual indication. Your leftmost column is the starting point. These colors do not necessarily map to the statuses. So in Jira, it's called the status category. A status is a to-do status, an in-progress status, or a done status. And that's gray, blue, and green. The color at the top of the column does not necessarily have to match the statuses within it. For example, this one is gray, my leftmost column, but it's got a blue status, accepted. And DOM combines all of the completed or the done status categories into one column, which makes a lot of sense. You want that one at the end. You can create, edit, move, delete columns from here. Just click and drag to reorder. And you can optionally include column limits. You can do this in a team managed project, but team managed projects only have a maximum limit. A company managed project can have a minimum and a maximum, or one or the other. So in this example, at least 3, but no more than 5 work items should be in this column. And there's no limits here. And again, we can map statuses, but we have to have at least 1 per column. And that's just how it works. Rodney, it's interesting because the only colors on columns that I've seen are gray, like the background. And then if we're using the limits, either yellow at the top for under or red at the top for over. I haven't found any way to change anything about the color of the column itself. We can do something with the cards, which we'll talk about in a future session, I think next week. Now, the columns in a company-managed Kanban board also look a little bit different. Or there's one big thing to know. We cannot set constraints on the backlog. So if we're using a Kanban backlog, restraints don't exist. And this makes sense because that's going to be everything. We don't want a maximum limit on the backlog because that's just everything we could possibly do. So it could be hundreds of items, and typically it just grows forever. And that last column, the rightmost column, will be the done column on the Kanban board. So it'll just turn green. This doesn't force you to have a completed status in there, though. You'll see in this example, I have a column called done that has a status called done, and it's not the last column. And this is just something to be aware of. Jira doesn't care what the column is called. As far as I can tell, the only place the name of the column shows up is on the column. So I can't reference it in JQL. It doesn't tell Jira anything about the order of work. It doesn't change workflows. So be careful with your column names. Make sure your team knows what it means, because in this example here, I have in progress that contains 3 separate statuses. One happens to also be called in progress. So I could easily see this being confusing for folks. Now, our company managed Scrum boards can optionally include restraints. So we think of column restraints as being a Kanban only thing. We can turn this feature on our Scrum boards. So if we want to have column constraints, and this again gives us more flexibility. And if you've heard of Scrumban or Kanban plus Scrum, this can be a way to help get you there. It'll let you control the process and workflow around the board column a little bit better as well. And we can also optionally set resolutions. I haven't used this particular checkbox here. Usually I just wait for the status to do that, so I have to dig in and understand more about this little happy guy. Now, I've mentioned some frustrations in here. Mapping multiple statuses to one column can confuse your team, and I'll show you what this looks like. But usually folks are used to clicking and dragging into a column, and that just updates the status. If there are multiple statuses, they'll have to pick which status to put it into. So I have seen teams just work on autopilot and just drag and drop into the top status, and that might not be the right one. So if you are doing multiple statuses per column, make sure your team knows to stop and look and think for a second and put the work item over the correct status. You can also unmap a status. In this example, in progress doesn't have a column. And this means that this status, well, I'm going to start a new poll and just see what people think happens if we do that. I have to type a lot here. I really wish I could start these in advance. Instead, I have to do silly things like compress. So just a quick thought experiment before I tell you all or show you all what happens. And as I mentioned, the column name itself can differ from the statuses. So if you do that, just make sure your team knows what the statuses are intended for. And this is where you might bring it up in your team stand-ups, in your sprint reviews, in your team trainings, whenever. But make sure people know what's going on, because these boards are intended to support our teams, not confuse us. I do need y'all's help. I'm putting together more content, and one thing I need your help with is figuring out what other content should I be creating. I will continue to do the ACA courses. I'm running through a cycle basically of all of them, and then I will repeat that cycle, a 4 or 5 week chunk. Should I cover in training? So this link will take you to a Google form. It can be anonymous. You can also choose to share your email if you want. But just curious what you think of these sessions and what else you would like to learn. So what went well, what else I should be doing, how I can improve, but just your ideas, because I will keep guessing and making up courses and sessions and live learning stuff. But if there's stuff specifically you want to learn, please tell me. There's a lot of great information, and I want to make sure you get the stuff that is most useful to you. Quick coffee break for Rob, and a reminder for everyone else, please hit the like button. We've got about 25 folks and 7 likes, which is amazing. About a third of us have liked the video so far. Please like it just if you like it, though. So please give an honest thumbs up. Here we are in Confluence for some reason, and I need to go over to Jira. And we're going to start out by taking a look at our team-managed board. And there's one other way to support me. I have a challenge going on, which I added, but if I get supers, which are, one-time votes of support, monetary support, if I get 5 of those in this session, I'll find a way to do this session using a physical board. I don't know what that would look like, but I would love the challenge. So help me get there by supporting the channel with a super. It should be up at the top of the chat. Here we are in projects, and I've got my team-managed demo project. Now, I know this is team-managed, because one tip is when I clicked on it, there's no boards under it. But also if I open up these 3 dots, I can see Team Managed Project right here at the bottom. And because I am a project admin, I can see this configure board gear. And I can also do things like configure the board. And so this will look similar to what I see in a company managed project. And I'll zoom in so we can see most of this. These are my statuses, and it's going to grab every status available in the project. Now, this will differ from a company-managed project, because if a company-managed project has company-managed board has multiple projects, I'll see every status that is in every work item that can fit into the board. So this is, again, where a team-managed project is simpler. I can just click and drag statuses to map or unmap. So maybe I have a pending and to-do in my to-do status, and maybe I don't like the name to do for this column. I can just straight up change it. Now you'll also notice when I edit that column header, I get the name, and this is where I can set my constraint. So there are some minor terminology differences between team and company managed. I am building out a course for the 905, and one of the things I am doing is trying to document out every specific difference, because there are a bunch of these little things. Again, a company-managed project calls these constraints. However, in a team-managed project, it's the maximum number of work items. So it's these little tiny things. We'll see this when we get to board filters. Rodney, I really appreciate your support, my friend. I don't know if I like the fact that you want to watch me struggle. But thank you very much for the vote of support on the super chat. If 4 more folks support me like this, you will watch me struggle in a video to set up and configure a physical board similar to how Jira does it. I don't know what I've just started though. So I can just change the name, and again, changing the name only really impacts the board itself when someone looks at it. It won't do anything else. So we can't really hurt the board by changing the name. And then I can set that maximum. I can also delete the column from here. Column deletion doesn't break anything. However, it will unmap all those work items. So it's not going to remove the work items in the column, but I'll have to reassign statuses. So I try not to delete columns, or if I do, I make sure my team knows when it's happening, because this can cause challenge. Geez. Oh, thanks, Liz. All right, we're up to 2 of 5. If 3 more people get a super, and as little as $2, if I get 3 more of those, I'll have to do this as a physical board, which is going to be interesting. I might have to take my... and I'm getting worried. In here, I can also add new columns just by pushing the plus. And I might have a column in here called, oops. Canceled is probably a bad name for a column if I already have a done. So maybe I'll call this like pending review. And you'll notice that I have this red asterisk. Now it's missing a status. So Jira is not going to let me save this unless I put a status in this column. So again, we cannot have a column without a status. I'm just going to grab a status and drop it in here to fix that. And then I can move this column into the appropriate order. So this is how I can adjust what's going on in the workflow, or in the board rather. And I can also get rid of these statuses. So if I save this change, I'm now going to get rid of a status. I'm going to unmap it. So I'm just going to pop back to my board. And one thing you'll notice, I'm in project settings right now. And that's because I'm a project admin. I can also get to it by going under board and columns and statuses. But if I look at my board, I might have this work item is in progress. So here's the status. I'm just going to go unmap this and we're going to see what's going to happen. And it looks like most of the people who voted nailed it. So here's my in progress. If I unmap it and save, what I'm going to see happen is those work items magically vanish. So I can see that that work item that was here is gone. This is a very common gotcha, challenge, whoopsie, whatever you want to call it, where someone will remove a status and the work items magically vanish. Now this doesn't delete the work item, it just removes them from the board because it doesn't know where to put that status. So you can restore it just by putting the status right back wherever you found it. So I'll just save this and go back. And now I have screen captures back here. Very common mistake. And it can also be common in like team managed projects if you have a lot of admins or if you have different board admins that aren't communicating. So if you have multiple board admins, make sure you all kind of understand, that particular thing, but also plan out and make sure that your column changes are controlled just to make sure you don't inadvertently remove a bunch of work items. So those are our settings in team managed. Company managed looks a bit different because you're a board admin. You have to go to the particular board. So again, team managed boards are just unique to the project. Everything's in there. Here, I'll open up my Kanban board and I'll just go to my board settings. And I need to dig into layout and I've got columns. A lot more options in here. I can turn on or off the constraints. And I can display epics. And this is also where I can turn on that backlog. The backlog is turned on just by adding a status to that column. And I can have multiple statuses. So I'll just start grabbing a couple. Here we go. Awesome. You'll also notice that the epic work items option is only available if I've turned on the backlog. So this depends on how my team wants to use the board. If I don't have anything mapped, there's no backlog. Easy. If I do have things mapped, I will get the backlog tab up at the top though. So keep in mind, this tab will only exist when I have that. I'm in the wrong project, aren't I? There we go. This tab only exists if I've got the Kanban board backlog mapped to a status. And you'll see I've got it's named not working on this yet, and then backlog. Bailey hides the canceled and completed statuses. That's another common thing folks do when something moves to complete. And that's something Kanban boards, we have this sub filter, can help us get rid of completed or deployed things after a period of time. But you usually don't want your board cluttered up. Scrum usually wants to see those just within the sprint. So during my sprint, I might complete things I want to see them, but by the time the next sprint rolls around, I wouldn't put them in the sprint. So that would also keep them out of my columns. So that's another way to handle that. Similar to my team managed projects, I can remap just by clicking and dragging. And if I remove these, they just fall off and vanish entirely on the board. And I can delete columns similar to a team managed project. It doesn't delete the work item. I'll just have to reassign any statuses in the particular column. I can move columns around. I can add new columns and rename them. And again, the colors relate to the intent behind the column. An in progress column, a to do, and a done column. If I move the last column to the left, you'll notice the green swaps. I don't think this has any direct impact on work items. It's just saying this rightmost column is considered the done column. And I need to dig in, unless Rodney, you happen to know offhand, if that has anything in the system other than, hey, this is done. Now, the updates I make to the board are instantaneous, so they'll just happen when I move columns around. So again, let your team know if you're messing with things. If you're changing the configuration of the board, because they'll immediately see it as soon as they refresh their screen. So we want to be careful about big changes, and we want to be careful that we control the change and tell our team, hey, I'm renaming the test column, I'm putting these different statuses in there. And here we have a good example of multiple statuses in a column. I've got this not working on this yet column, my backlog essentially, and my in progress. If I drag a work item over, you'll see, I zoomed in too far. I've got an in progress here and an architecture review. This can be dangerous if folks are used to just clicking and dragging and dropping, because maybe I didn't mean to put it into that top status. You'll also notice that these bars are even size. If I have more statuses, these shrink and shrink and shrink. So I want to be very careful to tell my team, hey, double check and figure out where you should put, which status you should put them in. So just make sure your team knows if there's multiple statuses, they have to stop for a second and drop on the correct status. This can cause problems in the workflow as people put them in the wrong spot. Chad likes to keep things interesting for his team. Oh, that's nice. That's smart. You don't want them getting complacent. Here, I got to put a little heart on these things too. There we go. Oh, come on, guys. All right, folks. If 2 more people support me with a super today, I'll do this in a physical whiteboard somehow. I wonder, should I do it live or would I record it? Dom's channel. In this case, I'm in a Kanban board, so there's no... what's it called? There is no sprint. If I go into my settings, that does not help me at all. Live, yes, Chad. Like an unboxing. Oh no. I'll have to dig into this, Dom. I think, and this is where I need to go double check. Kanban boards have this completed work items option. How long should the work items stick around? In a Scrum board, let me back up. So the settings for columns between Kanban and Scrum are very similar. So let me just open up a Scrum board, go to my layout columns. I've still got the green colors here, but the difference is in my sprint. If I don't pull a completed work item into a sprint, it won't show up. So if I complete OCR investigation, it's just going to hang out in this column until I complete the sprint and replan the next one. So at the end of the sprint, everything is taken out of the sprint and I can choose what happens. Should, excuse me, should open work items be rolled over or not? Now, it takes the definition of completed item as what's in the last column of the board, not what is in a completed status. So it's possible your last column is not a completed status. I haven't run into a case where the last column isn't the complete status. That's just me, though. But this, if anything's in that last column, it won't roll over if I choose new sprint. Usually I put things back into the backlog. And so if it's completed, my backlog wouldn't include completed items just because I've done them. So hopefully that answers your question, Dom. They won't be they won't be pushed into the next sprint if that's what I do. We have a release option. Releases relate more to, or just another feature in here. That's a good question, Tushar. I'll have to get back to you on releases and completing a sprint. Honestly, I haven't used releases. The teams I've worked with just use the board, and that they're kind of done from there. So I'll have to flex my knowledge and get back to you. I will also, again, shout out the Discord channel. I've got over 200 folks in there who are collaborating, sharing knowledge, and people who are a lot smarter than me, honestly. So if you're looking for more support and community, jump on in. Rolling on to Swimlanes, though. Have you used the query swim lane? Have you used query swim lane? I didn't know what this was. Yes. 2 more folks to get to Rob trying to struggle through a physical board. I don't know, this will be fun. Quick coffee break and a quick like reminder. Hit the like button or support me with a super and watch me embarrass myself. Apparently live at some point. Rodney, I'll challenge you on that. That can be a superpower, my friend. Swim lanes are the rows on a board. And this is where, different teams, I was joking with Chad about this, I think, in our first session. I will use the Atlassian terminology to describe these things because that's what we will run into on the exam or when we're using the tool. However, if your team calls these something else, that's totally okay. Just be aware when you go into the system or when you look up help, you'll have to use these terms like swim lane and column. Now, the swim lanes are entirely optional and a bit configurable. They mainly make visualizing information easier because we'll be able to then slice and dice the board so we can see and understand what's going on it more easily than we would otherwise. Now, in a team-managed project, we get 4 options. We cannot change these, and we're stuck with assignee, epic, and subtask. The project grouping doesn't exist because it doesn't make sense. You can only have one project in a team-managed board. So by default, it's in a project swim lane. It's just everything. Of course, the none option doesn't do anything. I use assignee the most because when I'm doing something like a stand-up, I want to just show, hey, Tushar, where are yours? Hey, Chad, where are yours? Dom, where are your work items? Makes it very easy to visualize. It also helps my team when they're using the board on their own to see where things are. You can also, though, split it up by epic if you're using those or by group by subtask. Liz, your accomplishments... Oh, I'm zoomed in. Folks, you got to keep me honest. Liz, your accomplishments shouldn't force me to do crazy things, too. Bailey, thank you for keeping me honest, my friend. I'll back up one to give you that slide. We'll also see this live, but Swimlanes give us that group option. Now, this shows up on all kinds of boards. Again, another weird terminology thing. It's the grouped menu lets us put in swim lanes. So just keep in mind, this is how we make swim lanes. It's the group menu versus the swim lane menu. Now, there's several options in the company managed projects we get that are different. We can do it by stories, but also by query. And I think I chopped off one here at the bottom that's project. But the queries one is configurable. And this to me is where it can be interesting and we get more flexibility in the company managed project. And it looks like most of us, either haven't used it or don't even know what it is. Honestly, I've never used it with a team. I always just defaulted to assignee. If Liz is right, Chad, then more people should be supporting us here. Now, again, groupings are totally optional, and it's just whoever's viewing it. So Chad could use one grouping for his work, and I could use a different one for mine. Now, the queries swim lane lets you define swim lanes based on JQL. So this could be interesting. You might do it, let me back up. You might do it by priority. So I've got a swim lane for low priority, a swim lane for high priority, a swim lane for everything else. I might do it by component. What kind of components are on the work items, and then have that help me sort and manage the work items. Now, what queries I use and how I do this will differ based on my team's needs. So it is flexible. You can go in and change it at any time. It doesn't change the work items. It's just, again, changing how we view things. Rodney's used it for the high priority swim lane. Now, keep in mind when you build them, if you have more complicated JQL, or if you have any JQL, whichever one it matches first will show up at the top. So if it's by, say, if it's by priority and location, the first match is where it goes. Interesting. So it sounds like Rodney had a high priority at the top, and then Rob's tickets, Liz's tickets, Rodney's tickets, Chad's tickets. So it also lets you mix and match. You could do everything by assignee and then just have a high priority at the top, but there's always an everything else bucket at the bottom just to catch everything, just to make sure there is a place to put every work item. Again, I do it by assignee the most, though, because that happens to be most useful for Rob. It does show the unassigned work items, which can be very useful when you're sprint planning or looking at your backlog. It'll let you quickly see, oh, we're missing these, or these ones have been unassigned for some reason, and let you catch them. And you can control where the unassigned work items show up, either above or below everyone else. I tend to leave it below, but again, that's the default. That might not be best for you and your team. All right, quick coffee break for Rob, a quick like break for folks. 20 people, 11 likes. I absolutely love that. And we're 3/5 of the way towards the goal of forcing Rob to do a live board demonstration, which makes me nervous because I've never gotten that close before. Also, if you want to join the waitlist for the ACA-905 course that I'm building, it'll be an hour or two, maybe more, depending on how much I can cram in there of content around the ACA. Just another way to study. Join the waitlist here. That will be a paid course, but like with all of my paid content, if you have any kind of financial challenge or hardship, reach out to me. Email's at the bottom. And we'll see what we can do. More important to me that you all learn and expand and grow and feel comfortable with this stuff, then I get a couple of bucks. So please join the waitlist if you're interested in the course. I'll let you know when it's live. Here we are on the board, and right away I can see there are swim lanes. And I can tell because this one looks like it was done by story. And so I can actually just collapse all these, and I can see there are 2 stories in here that have some subtasks. And you'll notice there's this everything else bucket right at the bottom. So it's helped me very easily see where is work. Now the columns are maintained, as you'll notice. So I'm going to pop over to my team managed project real quick. And I have this group menu up at the top. The default is none. And so we can see it's just flat, but I can start changing this around to by assignee. Oh, these are the ones assigned to Rob. Here are the ones assigned to everybody else. Now, of course, the swim lanes you get depend on the data and what matches. I only have one assignee, so only one person shows up. I could also show it by subtask. I don't have any subtasks. Let me go add one very quickly. Subtask. All right, now this groups it similar to the stories grouping on a company managed board. You'll notice it's showing me this work item has a subtask, and here is that subtask. This makes the most sense, obviously, if you use subtasks. Sorry, Liz, Chad, and Rodney are trying to break YouTube, it looks like. So again, a terminology difference. The group by subtask and group by story are the same thing, but in a company or team managed board. And again, in team managed, these are just the options I have. I can't. No. Yep, the theory works, folks. Oh no. All right. I just made more work for myself, didn't I, team? Thank you all for supporting the channel. And apparently be on the lookout for a live video where I try and build a Scrum board. I will take comments on what that should look like. So the team managed board, again, very straightforward. I have some group options. And again, I tend to use assignee because that is the most useful for me and my teams. So please keep this in mind. The company managed boards are where it gets more interesting. And that's because I get that query option. I can also show it by project. So this is only useful, again, if you have multiple projects in the company managed board. But here I can see, it's only one. Where did I have an example? Here we go. This board has work items from 2 separate projects in it. And so if you have a sufficiently complex board that pulls in 3 or 4 or 5 projects, this can be a very quick and easy way to figure out where is the work in each project. So again, I haven't seen this too much because I tend to have single project boards. However, this is how you can get to that easily. Now, the next one is our query. You'll notice it's not listed here, and I believe that's because I don't have one set up. So I'm going to go configure this board, and I'm going to pop into my Swimlanes option. Now, in the company managed boards, this is just going to be a drop-down where I can click and see, and you'll notice select method. What it's doing and what it's not telling you, I believe, is setting the default on the board. Nope, I lied. Let me go back in here. I thought that's what that did. Most of these will just tell you what they do. You'll notice, annoyingly, some have the helper text, some don't. But some of these also don't have any options. Project doesn't have anything. Epic doesn't have anything. Assignee lets you change, do they show up at the top or the bottom if they're unassigned. Stories doesn't have anything. Queries is where it gets interesting, though. Bailey, multi-project boards can be either Kanban or Scrum, but they have to be in a company-managed project. So we can't have a team-managed multi-project board. Hopefully that answered your question. And that's defined by the filter on the board. So if I go to my board details, this filter query is what is telling the board grab work items from mobile and JQuil JSM. And I can go in and change that just by editing the filter. So I could add a third project if I had to, or taking one out. Yep, nailed it, Rodney. Thank you for jumping in, my friend. Back to my Swimlanes. Queries are the interesting one. It does require us to know JQL or Jira query language, which can be confusing if we're unfamiliar with it. You're welcome, Bailey. Thank you for confirming. But all I'm basically doing here is saying, I want a swim lane called low priority, and the priority is low, and I want something called expedite, and the priority is oh my gosh. Maybe what I'll do is steal Rodney's idea really quickly, and I'm just going to change this to have one called, like, I'm going to change this JQL and call this, like, high priority items, and I'll even spell high properly. And I'm going to change my JQL to be like, so my highest priorities, and I'm going to change these other swim lanes to be particular assignees, Rob's work items. Oh. Things are breaking on me. There we go. Now, I would repeat this with each assignee I had. Oh, I got to actually fill in my full name. So now I'm expecting one swim lane for highest priority items and one for Rob. I would then have one for Liz, Rodney, Bailey, etc. Excuse me. But in this example, I only have one person. So I'm going to go back to this and then just change my grouping. So I'm going to go to queries. And now apparently I'm not assigned to anything, so I need to quickly give me some work items. One quick tip, you can just click on someone's head in here and change the assignee very quickly. Let me do this again and make my example work. And of course it's not working. Thank you, Jira. I'm going to quickly try and change this. I won't fight with it too much just so I don't waste y'all's time, but you kind of get the idea. I can control what is in the swim lanes. Maybe I'll just use current user to make that as simple as I can. There we go. So now I have 3 swim lanes. I've got my highest priority, I've got my Rob's work items, and I've got everything else. Now, it is possible in this example that there is a high priority item that is assigned to Rob. But because this was matched first, that's where it's displayed. So work items will only ever show up in one swim lane. So if you find a work item in an unexpected place, go check your JQL and go check the order you've put it in. So that would require you just to go into the board settings under layout and swim lanes, select queries, and then just change the stack ranking. Now, again, it depends on what your team needs. It's probably most useful to show the highest priority at the top so the team can swarm those and knock them down. But you also might choose to have something else at the top. But if people are confused or complaining, hey, why is it showing up here? This can be why. All right, team, what other swim lane related questions? And then just another quick shout out to the Discord channel I've got going. Great folks in there. You can get a lot more fun banter and back and forth as we go. And I guess a quick poll. Are you excited to watch me struggle do a live board? I know I am. That was about all we had for swim lanes and columns, team. Next session will be next Friday, same time, same place. Between now and then, please get hands-on. Go into Jira and start poking around with boards. Start understanding how they work a bit. Because the columns and swim lanes really define the user experience. They, that is what people usually interact with. Our development team is in there. Our working team is in there building stuff out. And so how we support that and how we display it for them is incredibly important to their success. And a lot of that boils down to our comfort with it as admins. So the more we are familiar with it, the more comfortable we are, the better it is for our teams. This recording, of course, is available along with the rest of them. And please check out the link right under me, learn.heen.tech. Got a lot of great paid learning courses. And again, reach out to me direct. I'll drop a similar link right here in the channel if you need help with anything. Otherwise, feel free to shoot me an email, find me on Discord, pop me a LinkedIn direct message, whatever you need to get help or support, or just to say hi. I will also be at Team 25 in Barcelona, so if you happen to be there, come find me. I'd love to meet y'all up and just say hi. I'll also be producing content while I'm there, so if you have ideas on what you want to learn from Team 25, please feel free to request something, essentially, and I'll see what I can do, whether that's go meet someone, go experience something, that kind of thing. Otherwise, I want to thank you all for learning with me today. I never thought I'd get this deep in column and swim lanes, but I'll jump on in. I like Liz's point here. The cleaner the board, the cleaner our data. To expand on that, the board is how the team interacts, is largely how teams interact with work items, whether it's putting it in statuses or updating them. I'm getting a kick out of the poll. One person is not excited to watch me struggle. I hope that means you sympathize with me and don't want me to struggle. I thank you. Having a well set up board makes it easy for the team to maintain data, which makes it easy to do things like report and improve our process in our team. So that can be very big. Chad, thank you so much, my friend. Good to see you. I'll stick around for another moment or two, folks, while I wrap things up. But otherwise, I hope to see you next Friday at 6 a.m. Pacific, 9 a.m. Eastern. I won't be in the Pacific time zone, so you'll see a different background. Otherwise, thank you all. Again, I really appreciate this, the opportunity to learn with you, and keep the questions coming and keep engaging. So thank you all. I'll keep the chat open. Otherwise, see you soon. Dom, you are very welcome. I'm glad you're here. And I hope you have a great evening over in France. Rodney, I'm pretty sure you are. All right, folks. Have a great day wherever you are, and see you soon.